away, and welcome to the Chairman's Fireside Chat. This week we traveled to Indiana, where first we stopped in Bloomington, University of Indiana, where we paid homage and respect to our native ancestors. Through a purification ceremony. And from there we traveled here to the banks of the Ohio River, to the Angel Mounds site, where this was one of many other sites along the Mississippi and is considered the Mississippian culture. And it's the source of our culture as O-gah-pah people, as Quapaw. And so we've come here, and as part of the project, the expectation was to rebury in a respectful way the remains of our ancestors, as well as those funerary objects. So the business committee, along with other members of the tribe, traveled up to Indiana, and we've been here on site for the last 2 days, doing what we do as in our ceremony, taking everything that we've been taught and doing things in a respectful manner, and sending our ancestors back home. So that's really what this project is about, is paying respect for our ancestors that have passed on, and then reburying them and putting their bodies back into the earth so that they can finally rest in peace. From around the 1920s, excavation and archaeology began at this site. Site, and for roughly 80 years some of the bones of our ancestors, as well as other funerary objects, were contained at the campus of the University of Indiana. So there they've been, and part of this site was a repatriation project in collaboration with not just the Quapaw, but also other tribal nations such as the Miamis, as well as the Shawnee. And so we partnered with the University of Indiana Archaeology department, and from there we set the project up, and it's actually been an ongoing project. So this is literally 16 years in the making, through a Native American graves repatriation.
Hi, my name is Ed Herrmann. I am the Executive Director of the Indiana University Museum of Archaeology and Anthropology, and I'm here to talk a little bit about the Angel Mounds site. This site was occupied between about 1050 and 1425. And was occupied by the Mississippian culture. Behind me is the main part of the site, just on the other side of the slough, the waterway that's here, is about 100 acres that contain 11 earthen mounds that were constructed in order to watch the heavens. As well as for other reasons, of course. This particular site is a very important site in this region at that time. It's certainly a major trade center with artifacts from Appalachia, from the Gulf of Mexico, from northern Michigan, Minnesota, and stone as far away as Idaho. The site was palisaded, which means it had a stockade around it that changed in size over time. And people lived in a number of different places on the site, including an area that's just off to the left that I think is probably in the camera view, and a number of other places on the site. We're standing right now up on the third terrace of the site, where we also know that this part of the site was very important. We believe that the agricultural area, where people were growing crops such as maize and beans and also bottle gourds, most likely squash also. We have grape that was found here on the site. And we believe a lot of this was grown up here on this higher terrace that we have here. The mounds are really very interesting from a number of perspectives. Most recently, the perspective has to do with how the mounds are aligned to one another and to celestial, lunar, and solar events. What I mean by that is there are certain alignments on site that can only be detected on certain days. These happen to be days that are particularly important, and were for thousands of years and still are today. For instance, some of the sites are aligned, some of the mounds are aligned to one another on the summer solstice. In the morning, for instance, we can see the sunrise over the main mound, Mound A, from an observational mound, which was Mound F. Interestingly, of the 11 mounds, we think that at least 9 of them have orientations to some of the different events. Other events, such as the way the moon moves across the sky, an area where it might set mostly to the north or to the south. Those particular events are also marked and codified by the placement of mounds on the site. There's also alignments to the Milky Way, and these alignments occur on the night of the summer solstice. So we have some alignments that are that morning and others that are at night that align to the Milky Way, and a number of mounds together that actually align to these events that happen on a yearly basis. Perhaps equally interesting is that the lunar alignments to the moon, some of these only occur once every 18.6 years. So it's pretty easy to imagine a number of generations of people who were intently watching the movement of the heavens. And all of that is set out here as a part of the plan, we believe, for the site. So Angel Mounds was also a very important city in this particular area. In the region, there are a number of sites that were occupied at the same time, and we believe they were closely related to this particular site because the material culture found at those other sites are so similar to what was found here at this particular site. In addition, we're pretty confident that there were close to 1,000 people that lived here, perhaps more, perhaps fewer. And in different parts of the site, we had certain concentrations of places where people lived. Kind of over my right shoulder, in this region, there were a number of houses. We call that area the East Village. And there are also clusters of what appear to be homes. There are a cluster of structures that can be found in other areas of the site, and a number of structures that are also found up here on the third terrace, which actually is outside of the palisaded area that is just on the other side of the brush that you see here, which is actually a slough and a waterway that separates that 100 acres from the sort of mainland, if you will, this part of the third terrace, the upper part of the site. We also know that it was a major trading hub, and that the Green River is its confluence with the Ohio is just about a mile downstream, and was clearly very important to this site. These rivers would have been major thoroughfares for people as they traveled. It would have been relatively difficult in many areas of this part of the country to travel because it was so heavily wooded. We believe, for instance, that over 90% of the forests are currently gone in Indiana, and that most of the state would have been absolutely thoroughly wooded hundreds of years ago. Today and yesterday, and frankly the past few years, have been monumental for us, for Indiana University, for the various museums that are part of Indiana University. What was the Glenn Black Laboratory of Archaeology, which is now part of the IU Museum of Anthropology, of Archaeology and Anthropology. And also, importantly, the NAGPRA office at IU have been working for years, in particular, a number of individuals trying to create relationships with various tribes that are affiliated with this particular region and this particular site. So the repatriation of ancestors is the culmination of a lot of work and relationship building that have happened over a number of years. Extremely important for us also as we move forward. While it may be the culmination, it's also a part of relationship building that we sincerely hope only gets stronger with time. The work of repatriation is multifaceted, and it is a true collaboration that is the result of a long-term consultation with a number of people. It's not only with tribal members. At a site like Angel Mounds, which is a National Historic Landmark, it's also a state landmark site. A repatriation like we've experienced is a part of collaborations and consultations that extend not only through the Indiana University NAGPRA office, and also the various museums, the Indiana State Museum and historic sites, but also, of course, the tribal partners. In addition to that, we have a lot of work to do and a lot of different operations that we have to consult with in order to find a location that would be acceptable for reburial. Obviously, the most important is our tribal colleagues. But once we have places selected, and the history here is there's a number of places on site that were selected that we couldn't end up actually reburying in. What we were able to do is to use geophysical methods like ground penetrating radar and magnetometry to look into the subsurface of the earth to try to find places on site that are what we call quiet. Places where we don't see houses, or we don't see evidence of things like agriculture or mounds or potential middens or pits or burials or anything like that. We wanted to make sure we avoided them. So in some of the chosen places, we found there was too much erosion happening. One spot was very close to our Three Sisters garden that everyone was very interested in having it placed there, but the erosion there was excessive. The other thing we found was an old leach field nearby, so we couldn't, of course, reinter in those spaces. We tried to reinter also in the site itself, down on the floodplain, and part of the problem there was with the Army Corps of Engineers that wouldn't allow us to reinter in those spaces. There was also some disagreement as to, from some of the tribes, as to where, which places might be the most appropriate to rebury. Later, we came up onto the third terrace to do some investigations, and I think we were up here 3 different times to find a location that might work. And in the end, we found a spot that appeared to have no sorts of features, no archaeological features, and where we thought we saw only evidence of some modern plowing. Turned out to be very interesting, where we think we found evidence of agriculture, ridge and furrow agriculture, up here on the third terrace, which was relatively easy then to excavate and create the place where we could have the reinterment.